is a statewide advocacy group that represents all the community colleges of California, all the community college faculty of California. So we're not a union. We work very closely with the unions, as you'll be hearing from other union representatives today. And very often we co-sponsor legislation with unions. But because we're an association, a membership association, but people from any union or multiple unions for that matter can affiliate with FACC, and we hope that they do and will. So I was looking at what are some of the focal points that FACC has had on part-time issues in recent years. And what I thought I'd do is start with the professional standards for community college part-time faculty that appear on FACC's webpage, because I realized that when I mention some of these, even to my colleagues, even my part-time colleagues who are very active in advocacy work at my campus, a lot of times people are unaware of some of the things that FACC stands for part-time faculty. So for example, FACC supports the 75-25 split, which virtually nobody is observing. But as you know, that the goal is in AB 1725 to have 75% of our classes taught by full-time faculty. That would mean more opportunities for part-time faculty to transition into full-time roles. FACC supports academic freedom for all faculty. I understand that we have a legislative initiative coming up in the coming year designed to enhance protections for part-time faculty in particular. It's very difficult to say that part-time faculty who can be dropped from the roles with little or no rationale behind it enjoy the same level of academic freedom to speak out, to advocate, to teach according to their views and their principles that our tenure track colleagues do. This is an important issue and one that FACC is becoming more active with. FACC, of course, supports the recruitment and retention of a diverse faculty that mirrors what our students look like. We support the maintenance of the same hiring and employment standards for the regular faculty as for the part-time faculty. So there shouldn't be a gap. If you were hired to teach as a part-time faculty, you should have the same standards and the same recognition, professional recognition, disciplinary recognition as your full-time colleagues. We support orientation and mentoring of part-time faculty, which in most of our schools is barely available, if at all. I know in my school that pretty much doesn't happen. Compensation for office hours for non-tenure track faculty. This is really important because, as we all know, our students' success depends on our availability to work with them. And that one-on-one contact that students tell us over and over again. I got an email from a student last night. This is so amazing to get direct personal support from a professor. It makes such a difference. If we are not compensated for our office hours, then obviously that, and this particularly for those of us who teach at multiple institutions, that becomes an increasing challenge. So FACC sponsored a bill last year, 2 years ago, Evan, to require districts to publicize whether or not they paid for faculty office hours. And we're very happy that that was enacted and that that is now a part of district obligations. FACC supports the full inclusion of non-tenure track faculty in the collegiate community, including governance structures. So we not only need to be included, but we need to be compensated. So if our full-time colleagues are participating in Senate in various governance committees, then we ought to have a seat at those committees as well, and also be compensated for our time. FACC supports 100% pro rata pay, equal pay for equal work. This is really critically important for non-tenure track faculty in proportion to the regular salary schedule. So my school is one of the better ones. We're paid at around 70% right now, equity. So that means I earn 70 cents on the dollar per hour for as my full-time colleagues. Plus I don't get any benefits. I don't get time off. I don't get sabbaticals. I don't get health insurance. All of those things are part of FACC's stand to advocate at the state level for part-time faculty to have full equity with their full-time colleagues. We support equal participation in union and Senate activities, including elections, negotiations, and organizational structure. I know that in some schools, the Senate and the union leadership is governed largely by the full-time regular faculty. Many of us have been advocating for years and in many cases quite successfully for integrating the part-time voice within those structures, particularly since we make up about 3/4 of the faculty body in most of our colleges. We support reappointment preference and seniority rights for non-tenure track faculty. So we want hire rights that are consistent and equitable across all the faculty. We support the lifting of the 67% pay cap, so that right now the most you can teach by state law, not by district edict, is 67% load, which means that many part-time faculty teach across 3 or 4 institutions to try to put together a full-time living. I remember there was one year that I had 140% load across 3 institutions and didn't qualify for health benefits at any of them. That's another issue that FACC is advocating for is, you know, the paychecks come from the state of California. How come if the state of California is ultimately my employer, I don't qualify for the same health benefits that my tenure track colleagues qualify for, including if I've been there 3 or 4 times longer than many of my tenure track colleagues. They support opportunities for promotion of non-tenure track faculty through formal consideration in the hiring process. Statistically, you are less likely to get a full-time job right now in your college if you are hired and have been teaching there as an adjunct than somebody who comes in from another college or another state and is interviewed. Considerably less likely. This information was published by AAUP last year. Why is that? Why can't we offer a hiring guarantee, not a hiring guarantee, a hiring consideration guarantee that at least you get an interview, at least you get full access to the same process. Thanks, Sally. Gosh, there's more that we do than I had realized. Last year, FACC was very active in advocating against the incursion of Calbright into, essentially competing with many of our part-time faculty who are very successfully teaching classes online at our institutions, and the Calbright essentially set up an alternate structure with minimum requirements for hiring to allow courses to be eroded from our existing colleges and transferred into an entirely new college, untested, unled. So those are just a few. I have 3 more pages of notes, Sally, which we can't go into here, but we've got plenty of time in breakout sessions later on. So thank you for letting me race through those. I wanted to give you a flavor of what FACC does.
Boy, you should be an auctioneer. That was really good. You spoke very quickly. Thank you, Deirdre. And John, you're up next.
Thank you. I've been told my voice doesn't carry over very well, so make sure you raise your hand if you want me to repeat something. Like I introduced myself earlier, my name is John Martin. I teach U.S. history, African American history at Butte College and at Shasta College. During my heydays, I used to teach about 140%. Overall, a couple of semesters at Chico State and Wales, the other 2. So I know what it's like to teach beyond 5 classes. But it's not about me here. What I want to talk about is CPFA itself. During the breakout session, we'll do more. I got websites I want to show you, this and that. So I'm not going to share you now. But we have to understand historically that CPFA started in 1998 by a group of people, and I think David Miller is one of them, or maybe came 1 year later in 99, that part-time faculty were not represented at all in any of the institutions that we speak of. FACC, CTA, CFT, CCCI, they were just not being represented. Their voices were silent or put aside or marginalized, what have you. So my understanding of history of CPFA, when it got started in 1998 by a bunch of rogue, outside-the-box thinkers, said we need to come up with something to represent our values and our goals. And so when this got started, other institutions started opening up. Now, I can't quote, when they started allowing part-time faculty on their governing boards or their committees. So I don't know all the particular details, but that's my sense. Because of that, and I'm included in one of them, that I got it started with CPFA shortly after 2000. I've been with CPFA since then, one way, shape, or form, or another, in different capacities. So I also got more involved with CCA, which is the higher ed arm of CTA, and I served 7 years there on the board. I've never been involved intimately with FACC, but I was a member of FACC for a number of years. But the bottom line here is that I represent other people in this meeting today. They have pushed themselves locally and statewide with different institutions. They've been more empowered. And I like to believe that CPFA was responsible for that. Having said that, one of the successes that we've had for years, we've always been promoted, a slight success, that we are much more of an outside the box type organization. For example, we absolutely oppose overload teaching. This topic is a 800-pound gorilla in all these other institutions because they're affiliated with full-time faculty. CPFA is an association, it's a voluntary association. Dues are voluntary. We have established a governing board that is run by part-time faculty, for part-time faculty, and everything we do, we think at large, outside the box. So to say that we oppose overload teaching, period, except for an emergency room, that says a lot about who we are. For example, another example that what we stand for, we don't like the cap, period. Do away with the cap. Why should there be a cap for us? There's no cap for full-time faculty. So why are there a cap at all? Now, recognizing those two issues, CPFA has to learn to work with the other groups. So we got on board, be a co-sponsor for raising the cap to 80, 85%. That's because wonderful organizations like CCCI, FACC, CFT, we really work together on trying to get this bill passed. Now, we know it died because of COVID-19, but we had considerable success across the aisle. So it will be brought back, and CPFA will be there as well. Now, yeah, we don't want any cap, but that's here and there now. So my impression here, and I want you to leave here with me right now until we get into the breakout session, is that CPFA, I've always considered some sort of rogue organization. We do work with other groups. I personally have been in Sacramento 100 times, and that's not an exaggeration, 100 times. Working through FACC first, then CTA, and now more CPFA. Working on legislations. During the breakout sessions, I can tell you some of the stuff we were very successful at, and I'll also tell you right now, we were responsible for the 67%, period. CPFA had insiders in Sacramento, and they were able to push this 67%, with Diamond's help. He was the author of the bill, and bless his heart, he passed away a few years ago. But I want to say that FACC, and in particular Andrew York at the time, and David Hawkins, he was with CFA, they helped us get this 67 in language. We originally had 85%, and everybody came down on us. I mean, literally, everybody came down on us, all the statewide organizations. So we had to compromise to 67. So CPFA have to do a lot of compromising because we're not as efficient and large as the other institutions. So having said that, I would like to talk more, but in the interest of time, I would defer the rest of my time to the next speaker, and I look forward to having you in our breakout sessions.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it's interesting because we are all these organizations, we're all part of a bigger group, but we can still maintain our separate identities and work towards a common goal. So yes, good points. So Jeff Michels is up. Jeff?
Thank you, Sally. Hi, I'm Jeff Michels. I teach English at Contra Costa College. I've been the lead negotiator for my district for the last 15 years, and I serve as president of the California Community College Independents, CCCI. We are the 13 community college bargaining units that are not affiliated with either of the two larger statewide teachers unions, CFT or CTA. We band together as a group of independent collective bargaining agents, And we function very much like a union. We have lobbyists in Sacramento. We write bills and support legislation. We meet regularly to support one another. And I see that we have our part-time leaders are both on the call, James Keller and Ray Brennan. Not all of our locals represent part-time faculty. We have a couple of districts where it's a full-time only group. But I think all of CCCI has been united for a long time in the basic premise that the biggest weakness by a lot, the biggest weakness of our community college system is our overuse and exploitation of part-time faculty. And until we address the issue of part-time faculty and the lack of fairness in how we treat part-time faculty and the inadequacy of how few full-time jobs we have, until we address that, all of the other initiatives that they keep coming up with statewide are doomed to fail because we do not have the human infrastructure in place to make the changes that we would like to see in our system. And our system is consistently hampered by the way we treat part-time faculty, by the way we undermine so much of what we try to do in education by not fully including all of our colleagues in our professional work and by not paying fairly and recognizing how that undermines teachers' abilities to teach. So we have tried to attack that, and I want to talk about strategy in my 5 or 7 minutes, but I'm always cognizant when we have these discussions, you know, nobody wants to come up here and say, well, let's start by reviewing all of our failures. We would like to talk about some of our successes and some of our strategies, but to be honest, we have a major problem. Our system is broken. And I think there's a tremendous amount of legitimate frustration that we don't just fix it. Why don't we just fix it? All of the faculty, and I mean all of the faculty, basically agree with everything that was listed, that Deirdre listed about FACCC's positions. We all agree on what you have to do to fix the system. The system is not fair. The system is not working for students. They don't have access outside of class to their teachers. Their faculty are not involved in developing and reviewing curriculum. Their faculty are piecing together work at 3 different institutions and driving all over the place and working out of the back of their car, and they don't have an adequate office. And I mean, I could go on and on and on. Why don't we just fix it? And I think in that compromise that John's talking about between aiming for the fences and just fixing it and the incrementalism that we know can be problematic, but that has made things better and will continue to make things better slowly, I think all of our institutions function and struggle so that we write bills that would fix big pieces of it. Last year, CCCI sponsored a bill that would have mandated progress to 75-25 over 10 years. We don't care where the money is going to come from. By the end of the decade, you will have 75% full-time faculty. And our bill, SB 77, had a lot of support. We think it would have passed the legislature, probably would have been vetoed at the governor's desk. A lot of the legislature understands it. And that's one of those bills that wouldn't fix everything, but it would be a major fix. The bill John was talking about, which we co-sponsored, that would have raised 67% cap to 85%, although I personally believe getting rid of the cap entirely is the right thing to do. There's a lot of compromise work that went into that, and that would have made it better. We sort of get stuck in between trying to figure out, can we write and pass legislation that would reinvent our system so that it would no longer rest on the exploitation of part-time faculty, versus what we actually feel like we can successfully negotiate. And we struggle with that on the macro level as statewide organizations, and we struggle with it in every district we work in. So that as a negotiator for my district, I'm keenly aware of all of the inequities that part-time faculty face and what a struggle that is for everybody, including the full-time faculty, and certainly for the students. And yet I keep negotiating, a little progress here, a little progress here, a little progress here. And we know, I mean, I remember there was a moment years ago, I am the longest serving member, I think, on Consultation Council. For whatever reason, I've been serving in that capacity, meeting with the State Chancellor's Office in the meeting that has all the constituency groups, although I would note no individual part-time faculty member sits on that committee. But I sit there and frequently I'm the guy raising my hand and as the blunt instrument at the table, because, you know, as the independents, we're not under the umbrella of K-12. We have a little bit more of a rogue feel to us. And so in some ways, we're able to be a little bit more blunt and aggressive, I think, than some of the other statewide organizations, even FACC, because sometimes we, although FACC certainly, I mean, and I should have probably started by saying, nobody should underestimate how important FACC and CPFA are to the struggle for part-time rights and to faculty issues in general statewide. The work that FACC does, the work that CPFA has done of pushing for part-time inclusion and making sure that these issues stay on the front burner. Because every time you lose a battle, you say to yourself, well, all right, we lost that one. I got to move on to something else. And we got to remember, this is not a battle we can actually lose. This is a battle we will keep fighting until we win it. And that may be next year, and it may be a 10-year process, but we will win it because we're completely right. And our students deserve access to their faculty. They deserve full service faculty who have meaningful jobs and benefits and are attracting and recruiting and keeping the best people and supporting them so that they'll be good at what they do, right? But for all of that collaboration and cooperation, again, I think I lost my train of thought for a minute, but I think we get stuck in between the incrementalist approach and aiming for the fences. And that's where groups like FACC really matter and bring us together. And you should see at the Council of Faculty Organizations, I remember what I was going to say. About a decade ago, I raised my hand at Consultation Council and said, the biggest issue in the state is full-time, part-time faculty. Why don't we go to 75% full-time faculty? That needs to be the only budget priority. And I remember Scott Lay, who was the advocate for the league that represents CFOs and CEOs, saying that's a $2 billion problem, Jeffrey. It'd cost $2 billion to fix it. And that's, all right, I shrunk back in my chair. Where am I going to find $2 billion, right? Well, I want you to know that the funding for community colleges has increased by more than $2 billion since then. So if they had spent the money, we would be there now. And I would argue that all their other strong workforce, equity, student success task force, all of that would work better if they had started by fixing this structural problem in our system that we exploit faculty. So at Council of Faculty Organizations, we meet once a month, the leadership of FACC and CFT and CTA and CCCI and the Academic Senate. And we are often strategizing. And I think everybody on the call, all rank and file part-time faculty, would be encouraged to hear what the ideas are and what the focus is, because mostly that's what we talk about. How are we going to advance this agenda where we improve working conditions for part-time faculty and more full-time opportunities? We have a lot of ideas for legislation. We are doing better, by and large, at cooperating with one another. So I think there's a lot of potential for progress. I think we have a legitimate frustration at how slow the progress has been. And just speaking for the independents, we see this as the most important issue in the state. Thanks.
Wow, that came in exactly at 8 minutes.
I thought I had John's time. Yeah.
Oh, great, good job. Yes, thank you. I know persistence and perseverance. There was a comment in the chat too about we've been talking about this for so long, but whether it's incremental or big steps, all of it matters. So yes, thank you, Jeff. And Kristie, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I don't think I'm going to take 8 minutes, but we'll see. I talk fast. And so hi, my name is Kristie Iwamoto, and I am here representing the Community College Association. The Community College Association is actually the higher ed arm of CTA, which is the California Teachers Association, which of course is a statewide affiliate of NEA, which is the National Education Association. I've been a member of CCA since 2007 when I first started teaching part-time. I teach English, and I actually am a product of community college, specifically of Contra Costa College, where I got an English associate's degree and then went on to transfer and get my master's. And now I teach, I actually have taught at Solano Community College, which is a CTA local, Los Medanos College, which is in the Contra Costa system, and in the Independence, and currently from Napa Valley College, and I am the president of the Napa Valley College Faculty Association, which is a wall-to-wall organization. At CCA, I am the CCA Women's Issues Director. So I'm an at-large that sits on the board of the CCA board. I also served on the Part-Time Faculty Issues Committee from about 2008 until 2014. And actually I was recruited by my good friend, John Martin, who's here at the on the panel with us. He convinced me to join the Part-Time Faculty Issues Committee back then. And we've done good work since then. I am also actually part of the CPFA Executive Council. I've been on that, I think I was on it briefly from like 2010 to 2012, and then I've been on it since 2018, and I'm currently the Northern California Regional Representative. But so just full transparency, I am also on CPFA, but I'm here today to talk about CCA. And of course, when you're talking about one of the two big unions, CFT, CTA, of course, there's that paradox, right, of unionism. Because what is unionism? What is the point of being in a union? The point of being in a union is to advocate for equity, is to advocate for equality for all of your members. So if you're a union, that's what you're there to do. That's your number one job. But you're advocating for equality in a higher ed system that is inherently and systematically unequal. So when the system is already set up two-tiered, then what do you do as a union to try to bridge that gap, to try to get that equality? So the Community College Association with CTA and NEA as our partners, we're constantly advocating for faculty and empowering locals, building strong and effective coalitions, and then fighting to preserve quality education. As far as part-time issues specifically, we are trying to be a driving force in advocating for part-time faculty compensation, for health insurance, for paid office hours across the state, and to achieving equity for all part-time faculty. That includes seniority rights, and I'll talk a little bit about our seniority rights bill in a little bit here. Job security, pay parity. Part-time faculty should be able to have benefits or a way to buy into benefits up and down the state. They should be able to grieve, and they should be able to have due process, because that's the cornerstone of unionism, is to be able to have that due process. And unfortunately, when your part-timers are at-will employees, they do not get that due process, because a dean could decide. I've been in situations as a union leader, I've seen somebody work for a college 25, 26 years, and then have that college say, I didn't like the way you talked to me, a new dean came in and I don't like the way you said that to me. So actually this is your last semester. And he said, I've been here 26 years. Why? Why are you not rehiring me? And the dean looked him right in the eye and he goes, you know, and I know, I don't have to tell you why. And that should not be happening. That should not be allowed. Not in a professional environment where someone has put in a quarter of a century. So that's part of what the union is there to do, to ensure that people get due process and to fight for due process, not just in our own locals, but across the state. Paid preparation time, right? Full-time faculty gets paid a certain amount for prep time. That's suggesting that a full-time faculty member puts all of these hours of preparation into their class, but a part-time faculty member does not, as though they just walk in and already know everything and don't need to be paid for the hours and hours that they put into their class. Again, it's unequal. Paid office hours and office space, and some of my colleagues here on the panel have touched on that already, that now more than ever, in this environment where we're all on Zoom and we're all speaking to our students through a screen, for a part-time faculty member to not have office hours, that is not good for our students. I've had several students who've asked the faculty member will come to me and say, I have a student who needs to see me in office hours, is struggling in the class, having a really hard time. They want me to meet with them for 1 or 2 hours just to help them out, but I don't get paid for office hours. What do I do? And as a union leader, I go, don't meet. I hate to say it, but if you say, well, if it's going to help the student, you should go ahead and do it. I said, if this district does not care about their student enough to give you an office hour, then you cannot care more than the district does. because all of us want to do that, right? We want to be able to go above and beyond. But the more that we do that, the more the districts take advantage. And so we have to be able to take a stand together and say, if you want office hours for your students, you will pay your part-time faculty for their office hours, as well as leave. Part-time faculty members get sick just like full-time faculty members. Part-time faculty members have family members who get sick, and elderly parents, just like full-time faculty members. They need to have the correct amount of leave. They need to have enough leave where they aren't burning up all their sick time just because they have to go away for a week. So all of these things are things that as a union, we're constantly trying to advocate for, not just statewide, but also at our local levels. And of course, with CCA, some of our locals are full-time units only. Some of them are part-time units only, but a lot of them are what we call wall-to-wall units. That means that we represent both full-time faculty and part-time faculty. The unfortunate drawback of that in some cases, not all, but in some cases, the unfortunate drawback is if you have full-time only leadership in your locals, then they tend to focus on full-time issues. And unfortunately, what are those things that get sacrificed first? The part-time issues. That's why it's important, and CCA advocates that all local leadership should really consider having a part-time committee, part-time representatives, part-time negotiators, so that that voice is always there and always at the table. One of the things that CCA has done for part-time faculty that I think is, that I'm actually personally proud of. I'm personally proud of the part-time seniority rights. And the reason that I'm personally proud of it is because I feel like I was there for all the steps of it becoming the law that it is today. I actually was one of the witnesses who spoke in favor back in 2012 when it was still called, I think, AB 856, and it was, oh, 1 minute. Okay. Oh my gosh, I did talk super long. Okay. And so, so I spoke as a witness. I was also primary witness with Jose Medina when it finally was getting into its late stages. I saw it die twice before it finally went through. And so, I really feel like that was a great stride, and I was proud as a member of CCA to be a part of that. Right now, we're actually CCA is working on a part-time parity bill. This will be one of our first primary pieces of legislation, so we're really excited about that. We're working through the internal channels of CTA and using our legislative expert, Efren Mercado, to pursue part-time parity across the state. So it's in its beginning stages right now, but we're really hoping to get that through. And so stay tuned, because we're really hoping to get pretty far with that. And that's all for me.
Thank you. I like that you mentioned, you actually defined wall to wall. Everybody that's been speaking so far has been really good about avoiding, acronyms and rushing through these titles, because, I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I don't understand some of those phrases. So thank you for not overusing some of those acronyms and making an explanation. Just a quick note too, because you're talking about equity. We're all here sort of to disrupt the dynamics and practices that reinforce and maintain this interlocking system of inequity. So it's just those of you that we even have some different definitions of equity, so we can talk about that later. So thank you, Kristie, and we'll move on to, we have John next. John, you're up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, it's really great to be here. I'm looking at the little Hollywood squares, and I see a lot of people that I know and respect, and I see a lot of people I've never met, and you guys are all doing fantastic work. And all the speeches I just heard, I mean, you just took some of my words right out of my mouth. I'm here for representing the California Federation of Teachers, or CFT, if you like the acronyms. As Kristie's representing the other big 800-pound gorilla in California union education politics, CFT is the second largest education union in California and nationally. And I teach at Cabrillo College, which is a small to medium-sized college in Santa Cruz County. I teach digital media. I've taught as an adjunct for over 20 years. And there I am the vice president of our Cabrillo College Federation of Teachers, because we have a 2 vice presidents, 1 full-time, 1 part-time, as we are a wall-to-wall unit that represents both. We have a part-time committee. We have part-timers on our executive board, and we have part-timers on our negotiations team, and we generally try to keep that balanced. So we do well locally to some degree to have our part-time representation at our local union. I am the co-chair of the part-time faculty committee of CFT, and I'm a vice president, one of the vice presidents of CFT. And we do have 2 or 3 or 4 part-timers as vice presidents of CFT. And as far as AFT goes, I also am one of the very few part-timers on the AFC Higher Ed Committee. They call it a Higher Ed PPC. For those acronyms, that's Program and Policy Council. That's what AFT calls their committees that do policy work. And so I've advocated on behalf of part-timers for a long time. And I wanted to get into something that Jeffrey said in a little bit. But first, let me just talk about CFT for a second, because that was what I was tasked to do for this. And after I heard, especially Deirdre went through the FAC positions, and then some of you also of your organizations, and I'm looking at the CFT positions, and they're pretty much the same. Can I share my screen? Zoom powers that be, is that okay?
Yes, you should be able to. John, go ahead.
Host has disabled participant screen sharing. I can't. Okay, well, I had made a page with what CFT is doing, but
Go ahead, John, try again.
I try again. Okay, let me try again. Oh, it looks like it'll work this time. Okay, I don't know if you can see that.
Looks good. Thanks, John.
I'm not sure. Okay, so essentially, these are some of the same things that you just heard from some of the organization's goals, and this is from the CFT Policies and Positions Handbook. And so, I think we're all pretty much in agreement on some of the main goals here. So I'll just leave that up for a second so you can read that. But CFT does do a lot of work legislatively, as does CTA and other groups here. And so we are planning on making a reprise of AB 897 as one of our main priorities for community college legislation for the next session. So even though that died due to COVID, I'm sure we'll all be working on that again to raise the cap. I love what John said and others about we don't want any cap at all. I don't personally want any cap at all. I do work in one of those big organizations where you have to do some compromises, and we got CFT to push 85%. So I think that at least is a step to no cap. It would be nice to work in CPFA where I could be a little more, a little more in a sense militant. And I think that's part of the reason we have the different organizations. When you have an organization like CPFA, which is just part-time faculty, they can take more purist positions, and then the big gorillas can try to push them legislatively with some compromises, and we all kind of work together to kind of move in the same direction. And so I think we're all coming at this from slightly different points of view, but with the same point of view in a sense. The fact that we exploit so intensely our contingent part-time faculty is really a sin, and it is really immoral, and it hurts our students, and it's just ridiculous. And as I think Jeffrey was very eloquent saying, this is our number one, this full-time part-time thing is the number one problem in our system, and we're not addressing it. I'm gonna try to twist this a little and say something that might not be too popular, and that is this: I have done advocacy work in this area for probably 20 years, as many of you have. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a meeting where somebody stands up and says, yes, but our number one goal is more full-time hires. We want more full-time hires. We all agree that's the solution, more full-time hires. And if you look at the progress we've made, at least in the time I've been here, we've made zero progress, maybe even backslid, zero progress, right? And that goes beyond 20 years ago. So is that 1 minute? Oh gosh, okay. So at any rate, if you look at this scientifically, and some of us believe in science, you might say, well, if you've had this goal for 20, 30, 40 years, and you've made no progress at all on this goal, you got to rethink this thing. Either that means that the strategy and tactics you're using are completely ineffective and you better radically rethink it, or maybe you need to examine the goal itself. So let's look at that goal itself. We want 75-25 at a minimum, perhaps, of a ratio of full-time, part-time. But beyond that, if we are making zero progress to that goal, no matter what we do, and we've thrown everything against the wall, nothing is stuck, right? Legislation, resolutions, blah, blah, blah. You know, this bill, that bill, funding, and it always goes back to the same ratio, no matter what we do. Maybe we need to look at a different way of doing this. Yes, you can try to mandate 75-20. You can try to mandate this. You can try to mandate rebenching the fund. You can try to put more teeth in the fund. You can do all this stuff. But everything we've tried has not worked at all. Maybe the issue is really parity pay. Maybe if we didn't pay and make cheap labor out of part-time faculty, if we didn't pay them cheaper and we paid them the same amount for the same work, maybe you wouldn't have that over-reliance on part-time faculty. So maybe another way to approach it isn't rebenching the fund, it isn't mandating 75-25 and putting teeth into this or that. Maybe it's totally focusing on parity pay. So I would just want to tweak your point of view there. It's like every time you think we need more full-time hires, we need more full-time hires, maybe we should put that energy into, we need to raise the pay of part-time faculty so they're not damn cheap labor. And maybe that's the way to get rid of this two-tiered system that is hurting us and hurting our students and corrupting us, really. It's just immoral. So I could go on about that, but I think I'll just shut up for now because I'm getting emotional.
Thank you, John. I actually was tempted when you said, well, I'm going to say something that's very controversial. I was going to say, sorry, time's up. But, you know, you had another minute. So, okay. So
I have another minute? I can keep going.
No.
Oh.
We'll come back to you. You'll have your time. So, Stacey, thank you for rounding this out. Stacey, you're up next. Wait, where did she go? There she is. Yeah. Okay. We
Unmute.
moving, but remember, we got to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There
Sorry
we
about
go.
So, Stacey Burks. I teach at Butte College. I've been teaching there since 1980, and heard the word rogue a lot. And I think, in a way, Butte College should be listed someday as a historical footnote, because when I started teaching in 1980, rural Northern California, rotary phones, ditto machines, no computers. I grew pretty dissatisfied after about 3 years. And I decided that, we need union representation. Now, I really was way over my head, but I just thought something, and I believed in unions, the little I knew. So our full-time faculty, back in the day, there was just two teachers organizations. It was CFT and CTA. There wasn't the CCA split off or the CFT split off. Our full-time faculty belonged to CTA. And when I approached them to ask, and there were about 3 or 4 of us who had decided we needed to do something, we were told that the pie was too small to split. And so they said no to us. So we contacted AFT, and AFT said they simply didn't represent part-time faculty. And so this little rogue group of people said, well, let's just form our own union. Again, we didn't know what we were doing. So it was all like having to write letters and call on rotary phones where it was long distance. It was 15 miles away back in the day. Anyway, we failed miserably. And about a year and a half later, I saw an ad in the paper that said, need help organizing, call. And it was CWA, which stands for the Communication Workers of America. Back then, CWA primarily represented Pac Bell. But at that time, they were busting it up because it was considered a monopoly. And the local in our town saw the writing on the wall and said, we need to start representing other factions. And so they took us in. And it took 3 years. Our school sued us, saying that it was illegal for there to be more than one union representing faculty. The PERB said, no, that's not true. They appealed the ruling. So they finally came through and said they lost that. And then we finally won our election, the right to be represented by Communication Workers of America. But it took another 2.5 years to negotiate our first contract. There was nobody for me or our little group to ask for help. We had no idea. We didn't know how many districts there were. We didn't understand any of that. And so historically, when I look back, I see that we were the little school that could. Because what happened is that 2 other community colleges heard our story and asked us to come and help them. And so CWA is a part-time faculty union only. And they put it in their constitution that CWA will only represent part-time faculty in the state of California. So we went and organized 2 other schools. And what happened is that CFT or CTA and AFT sort of saw the writing on the wall and began inviting associates into their organizations. But up until that time, we were the only district in the state of California that had union representation for associate faculty. Now, I've been told that some districts in Southern California had a union that you needed to join in order to teach there. But back then in the 80s, there weren't the number of part-time faculty that there are now. And so anyway, we only have 3 schools, but we've been very, very active. I have joked with John and both David Milroy that Butte College has been a breeding ground for CPFA. We have sent some great people who are on there. Laurel Hartley is currently on there right now. David Milroy and I were also instrumental in creating the statewide Academic Senate Part-Time Caucus. And we've got some resolutions passed. One of them is that we're now eligible for the Hayward Award, which we hadn't been. I was also very involved with FACCC. And it was, the Margaret Kwan Award, which FACCC gives out. Margaret Kwan was also an activist doing her thing with FACCC while I was doing my thing with local districts. So we really are kind of the old timers of this whole activist movement for associate faculty. And we believe firmly, and obviously this is controversial, that associate faculty, which is what we call ourselves, one of the resolutions we passed in the Senate was that part-time, adjunct, whatever you want to call yourself, have the right to call themselves what they want per district. You can agree. And so in our contract and on our campus, we are known as associates. And we have worked collaboratively with our CTA, full-time faculty union, on certain issues, but we are reluctant to join as a wall-to-wall unit. And we just have still such a long ways to go, despite the fact that I've been doing this for 40 years. We still have such a long ways to go. As far as successes go, we probably had one of the first seniority systems in the state of California. And it really is, I'd like to say, one of the best in the state, because we are allowed, our seniority says those with the most seniority must be given the maximal load allowed by law before somebody else is assigned. And it just doesn't get much better than that. We have lots and lots of things that we have been able to do simply because we've been doing it for such a long time. You have to realize that this all started in 1984, which seems like, well, it is decades ago. So I'd like to think that, I know that we had a few community colleges call us and said, is it a real union? Are you guys a real union? And it's like, yeah, we are. Okay, I don't have much more to say. We'd be glad to talk with you about our successes and what we have been able to accomplish. And even though there are only 3 of us, we're pretty proud of being members of Communication Workers of America, who were willing to take a chance on a bunch of part-time faculty back in the 80s.